I finished 10 books during the month of July, and I found a 5-star, which for some reason is only my 4th one this year. It has not been a great year in terms of 5-star, but there's a bunch of 4-star books, and you know, you don't need to give 5-star to a book to enjoy it. I would recommend a lot of these, so let me review them. I'm gonna grab them in order just to not forget anything, but the first book I finished this month was A Reaper at the Gates by Sabaa Tahir. This is the 3rd book in the A Number in the Ashes series, YA fantasy, and I needed to know how it ended, so I did buy and read also the 4th one, so A Sky Behind the Storm, because I just needed to know how it ends. Should it have been a trilogy? I do think so. I feel like book 2 and 3 were a bit of a struggle to go through. I'm going to give it a 3-star. And I will round it up to a 4 for the 4th book because of that ending. I just needed to know what was going to happen to my characters, okay? Book 1, I got so emotionally invested instantly. I think I gave it 5-star. At the time, I thought I was over YA books because they tended to have tropes that I don't really care for. And like, to be fair, book 1 does have like love triangles and everything and still love vibes. But I got so emotionally invested because the author's writing is great, so I decided to continue. So yeah, 4 books was a bit long, but I liked that series. I believe she came out with a spin-off series, which I might explore also because the world building is really interesting. I'm enjoying the magic system. Battle of good and evil, a lot of characters that you will get invested in that the author will decide to hurt you through. But it was worth it. I'm glad I did read it. I'm glad I did finish it. It is one of my goals this year to finish series. So I did it, but 4 books was too much. Let's talk about ARCs. I have 2 books that I read that were advanced reader copies. The first one is the newest book by Megan Miranda. You Belong Here, You Don't Belong Here. I love her. I feel like she writes the perfect like popcorn beach read novels for me. They're always murder mysteries in small towns, and for me, that's cozy. I will not debate it. For me, it's cozy. This came out actually this week. It was coming out 29th of July, I believe. So I read it just in time, and just in time to tell you that I think this is going to be part of my top 3 by her, because I checked and I've read 8 of her books now. So clearly, I just keep going and going. There's only one I didn't care for. Otherwise, they're usually like 3.5, 4 stars, and this is going to be a 4-star. I liked it. The premise, you're following this woman who went to this small town university, her parents lived there, and there was a fire that maybe her friend was responsible for. People died, and then because her parents didn't want her to be attached to it, they shipped her away. And she decides to come back because her daughter decided, yes, this is where I want to go to university. Cool. So of course, you know, small town, the gossips comes out, the secrets come out to haunt them, and things happen. I would say this is perfect to read it right now because it happens throughout the school year, especially again, August, October. So again, extra cozy in my opinion, but yeah, I couldn't put it down. I just wanted to know what was going to happen. And at this point, I read pretty much every single book that she comes out with every year. So would recommend it. Now, the star of this video, my 5-star, Among the Burning Flowers by Samantha Shannon. This is the 2nd prequel in the Priory of the Orange Tree series, and I loved it, okay? I'm gonna be honest, it might be more of a 4.5, but solely because it's so short. My only complaint about it is that it's 300 pages, and like her other books are like 800 pages. So I thought it was a little short. You do need to read the other books, especially the first book in the series, otherwise you're not gonna get it. It happens really just before. This series is following this big battle between good and evil where dragons are trying to like take control of the world. And it is a queendom. Every queen gives birth to one queen that looks exactly like her. That's how the magic system works. It's interesting. Would highly recommend this series. In this one, it's mostly following different characters, seeing the gleam of these dragons coming back to life. A lot of political intrigue, but yeah, a little short, but I really enjoyed it. At this point, I will read anything that the author comes out with from that world. So definitely would recommend it. I need to get a copy because that cover is beautiful and it is coming out in September. So if you enjoyed the series, I'm sure you're going to enjoy this one too. I did finally try some Jodi Picoult. I see her books everywhere, and I really didn't think it was going to be for me because I had seen My Sister's Keepers in a movie, and I was like, these kind of books just try to make you cry, and like the good ones will, but the bad ones, they just anger me. I just feel manipulated, and I wasn't sure she was going to be for me, but I decided to try her, and I'm glad I did because I really like her writing. So Small Great Things is one of the ones that you guys recommended for me. I did have a list because I asked for more recommendations, and I did go use book shopping, and you'll see in my next book haul I found a couple. I like that she actually approaches topics that are not necessarily easy to handle. And this one is also sensitive. You're following this Black woman in the US who works as a nurse. She's been at the same hospital for like 20 years. And then one day she arrives to take care of a baby. That's the word she's at. And this family tells her that they don't want her to touch her baby because they are Yahtzee. And then there's an emergency situation that happens, and then she freezes. Is she supposed to do something? They don't want her to touch the baby. And as they're trying to help the baby, it doesn't make it, and she's the one doing compressions. So it goes to court, and there's a lot of drama happening. I did really like, again, her writing. I appreciate that she attempted to talk about this topic because I feel like a lot of white authors would not want to. I forgot to mention that the chapters from the point of view of the dad were really difficult to read because obviously racism. But I appreciate that she really tried to humanize him because ultimately nobody perceives themselves as a villain. And like I said, I do feel like she's doing that with all of her books, which again is interesting to see. In order to keep this video spoiler free, I will be vague, but I can always tell you in the comment section. But there are 2 things that happens at the end that made me reduce it to 4. I did like the book, but I feel like it's her writing that really impressed me. So I wanted to try more, and I will. So thank you, Jodi Picoult, for speaking online. That's basically, I saw her video and I appreciated her using her voice, so I decided to support her. And yes, this was good. Would recommend. And I decided to read some mystery thrillers because, again, summer in my head is mystery thriller before we get into fall. And I wanted to try more by an author I had enjoyed before. So I tried Salvation of a Saint, which this is part of the same series I had read about a detective, but it's technically my 3rd book by him. And it's a Japanese translation. I had really enjoyed the first book, The Devotion of Suspect X, and would recommend that one. This one was okay. So the detective is trying to figure out what happened exactly because there is this man who is murdered and his wife is out of town. So can she really be the murderer? Because usually it's someone close to you, right? But the person that discovered the body is his mistress that had the key because the wife left it to her. They work together. So, you know, the suspect is usually going to be the wife or the mistress. It doesn't make sense. They're trying to piece things together. And it was okay. I did feel like the answer was okay. I'm going to give it 3 stars though. I did finish it and I wanted to know who did it and how, right? That's definitely the whole point of the book, but I'm not sure I'm going to read more by him. In general, I feel like Japanese translations read so dry, but it didn't really bother me in terms of like detective book because they don't tend to have great prose anyway. But I do feel like the more I read them, the more I'm annoyed by the way the male characters talk about women, and sure, partially cultural differences, but in general, I feel like detective books tend to do that to me. So it's going to be a 3. It's going to be a 3. The next vlog I'm filming is about my pile of shame, which is what I call the books that I started but never finished. And because I was planning to do that, my brain was like, I should start. So I decided to pick one book that I had started but didn't finish yet. On the calculation of volume 1, which the title is awful. I feel like it would never make me want to pick this up, but it contains one of my favorite tropes, which is time loop. And this woman, she sells and buys these antique books with her husband, and one day she is traveling into town to buy some more and she wakes up the same day over and over again. So the book starts and she is on day 121. It's November 18 and she doesn't know why. She doesn't understand what's going on and she's reliving that day over and over again. So it is a boring book, but it reminds me a little bit of like The Wall, which I have mentioned. I feel like it's the kind of books that I don't necessarily enjoy myself that much reading it, but I think it's an interesting thought experiment. It is a translation. I believe it's Danish, Norwegian, one or the other. I think Danish. And it's going to be a 7-book series. And I'm going to say, I do think it might have been better to be a trilogy because it's so short and not much happens. You don't get answers in this book. So I'm a little torn. I did put my name on the waiting list at the library for book 2. I will be giving it a shot just to see what happens. I have heard that book 2 gets better. So I'm still intrigued. I'm going to give this one a 3-star. And like I said, I am a sucker for time loops, so I want to try more. But yeah, it was okay. I do like the idea of speculative fiction, so we'll see where it goes. But I'm not fully convinced, clearly. But I'm happy because the first time I had read the first, like, I don't know, like 20-something pages because I didn't know what to read next and put it down. And I wasn't going to really pick it up anytime soon. So I'm glad I did. I have some answers, but I need to continue. If you have read this series, please let me know because I really don't know how I feel about it yet. I did read a nonfiction. I have been giving myself the goal of reading like 5 pages a day, especially when nonfictions are really dense. I feel like it's the easiest way to go through them. So I read They Were Her Property, which is about white women as slave owners in the American South. I don't know if it was like a PhD dissertation. I know she's an associate professor. It was published by Yale University Press, but oh, it does say best doctoral dissertation. So she's definitely proving a point, having this argument. So there's definitely a lot of notes, a lot of research. So it is dense. With that said, very interesting topic. I learned a lot. I feel like white women are often portrayed as the victims also of slavery. You know, they had no power, no control. It was their husbands. And the author definitely proves through court documents or even like journal pages that no, white women did own people and they were doing it for money. And for example, when they would get married, their parents would gift them enslaved people and write a contract in a way that would make it clear that if her husband, for example, loses all his money, people that he owes the money cannot come for her and her property. So it was definitely a dense, difficult topics, but I do feel like she definitely proves her point. So I would highly recommend it if it is a topic that you are into. I was actually reading this at the same time as this one at one point, and let me tell you, they definitely go together. During the summer, I also like to get out of my comfort zone genre-wise. I definitely read a little bit of everything in here. So I tried some historical fiction, and this is Isola? I'm not sure. So I believe the author writes historical fiction in general, but for years she meant to write a story about this woman who actually existed. So Marguerite de la Roque de Roberval. So a 16th century noblewoman, and you're following her story, her life story in here, including the portion that she was interested about. So when she's a young girl, her parents die, so she is under her uncle. She is very isolated, but she's living well until he loses the money because he's an explorer. And long story short, to not spoil anything, she ends up having to go also to the New World. And this is where things go wild, and that's the portion of her life that the author had heard about. Funnily enough, but not so much, it's the portion I didn't like. The beginning was like a 4.5 5-star. I was really liking the author's writing, and as soon as they arrived there, I lost interest completely. It was like a 2-star for me, and then eventually things pick up. Again, I don't want to spoil it, but I can in the comment section. Things get better, and I enjoyed the ending. So I'm kind of torn how we feel about this book, because overall, is it a 3 or 4-star? Like, I didn't hate the book, but the important part was the part I didn't like. So let me know if you have read this author. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. I don't want to say more because I feel like it would be a spoiler, but I can tell you the portion that isn't a huge spoiler, like just the portion that the author had heard and that made her want to write about it. I feel like it says part of it in the back, but I don't even read the back of books anymore because there's always so many spoilers. Or on accident, you'll read the back of book 3 when you're about to read book 2 and spoil the ending. That definitely has happened to me too. So beware. But it is like a tragic love story, and she does end up being very alone and isolated in the New World. That's kind of vaguely giving you an idea of what's going to happen, but yes, I don't know how to rate this. Is it a 3? Is it a 4? I don't know. If you've read more about the author, please let me know, because again, I really enjoyed her writing, and like, I know it's not necessarily super important, but it does improve your reading experience. It is a really good floppy book, okay? This one, and also this one was also a good one, okay? Like, they just make me so happy. I don't like the stiff ones, especially like mass market ones. These are so good. Anyway, I did read another nonfiction called Ejaculate Responsibly, a whole new way to think about abortion. And I like to try bite-sized kind of nonfiction introduction into the topic, and I do think that this is a good one to try if the topic is interesting to you. I feel like sometimes we tend to forget that we can talk about certain topics in a completely different way. Reframing them completely changes our perspective, and she does address men quite a few times in the book because they're often the ones that need that reframing. And it reminded me of this other book that I read that was mentioning how, for example, when we're talking about sex, it's very male-centered, right? Penetration. instead of envelopment, for example, and it tends to be quite violent too when you're like talking about it, like using slang, like I hit that, for example, and a bunch of other ones. So that's kind of what she does with this one, and that's why she's saying that abortion is a men's issue, and that's why she's using that very attention-grabbing title. Because when you think about it, I could have all the sex that I want and never get pregnant, unless... I mean, I have no tubes anymore. But in theory, if someone does have functioning uterus and ovaries, and they have sperm enter, it's the only way. Or you may have heard the whole situation that, okay, if you can carry a baby, the only situation where you can get pregnant is one day a month. But if you're the one that has the sperm, then you are fertile 24/7 every day. So why is the responsibility put on the person that can get pregnant? I know why we do it that way, but is it really fair? And while some of the things that she points out are not necessarily brand new, and they, in theory, sound obvious, I feel like we don't necessarily hear them day to day. So she's saying how, interestingly, when I point out that women are currently expected to do the vast majority of pregnancy prevention, I don't think I've ever heard someone say, this can't be right, this seems unequal, this seems wrong. Anyway, this was interesting, would recommend, and I am currently reading 2 more books, so just a quick shout out. I don't want to talk about it. This is the Lotus Empire, the last book in the Burning Kingdom series, and like I said, I am going to be doing a Pile of Shame reading vlog, and this is going in there because I have read 2 chapters this month. In my defense, when I first started the month, I did my Read It or Unhaul It challenge, so I had to put down whatever I was reading to do it, and I never really picked it back up again, 2 chapters in a month. So it needs to happen. I need to do something about it because it's going to be on the Pile of Shame officially otherwise. So that's the one I need to read. And my new nonfiction is Doing Harm, the Truth About How Bad Medicine, Lazy Science leave women dismissed, misdiagnosed, and sick. I do think that so far it's interesting. I am 46 pages into it. You can definitely tell that the author is a journalist because it reads very easy, very beginner friendly in terms of the writing style for nonfiction. But even the intro is good. She's talking about, like, there are 2 possibilities. There are 2 things. There is the knowledge gap or the trust gap. Like, we know nothing about the female body for multiple reasons, including the fact that until the 90s, the research didn't need to include women at all. And they didn't need to include people of color either. I think she was saying that even right now with the new laws, it's like 60% men and 80% white people. And then there's the trust gap, which is because women are not believed. So I think it's going to be a really good, impactful one. I've read a couple books on the topic, but I can already tell it's going to be good. So I had a great time this month, and we're just not going to address the fact that I have yet to listen to an audiobook still. This is bad. I'll put more videos on the screen that I recommend you check out, including my summer TBR, what I'm going to be reading next month. And I also did a video reviewing a bunch of the most read books so far this year according to Goodreads, and I included like 75 reviews because for some reason I have read so many of the ones on the list. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.